Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So we're talking Washington Commanders free agency and what free agents they should target. Personally, the guys I would go after, and then some guys that I think the team will consider, whether it's relationships or guys that they may look at and say, this guy would be a good fit here that I don't necessarily agree with. We'll bring those guys into focus as well. Before we start, I got to give out the disclaimer. This free agency process is very fluid. It's touch and go. These free agents, these potential free agents, have a chance to still negotiate with their current teams prior to free agency. So at the time of this video, none of these guys have re-signed with their former teams. They're all heading towards free agency, and that's why I'm talking about them. By the time you see this video, they may have struck a deal with their teams and gone back to their former team, and thus they're no longer a free agency, rendering their involvement potentially in free agency irrelevant, right? That said, hopefully these guys remain free agents because I want as many options available for the Commanders at the cornerback position as possible as we head into this process. So with that said, the cornerback position is one of two positions in particular that I expect a massive uptick in production. I thought that we saw a steep drop-off in the play in the secondary when we moved on from Chris Harris, our former secondary coach. Now, I don't want to make it seem like Chris Harris was this, rock star of a coach. Oh my God, I can't believe we moved on from him. But he made a difference. Clearly he did, because our secondary went to hell in a handbasket last year. And the same players were essentially there, but you didn't get the same results. And I'll just say this. Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn's specialty, but Joe Witt Jr. in particular, his specialty is the secondary. He's going to coach these guys extremely hard, and he's going to get the most out of these guys. Either they're going to play their asses off for Joe Witt Jr. and going to become studs for us, or he's going to get these guys out of here and bring in guys that can. And so I think there are some guys that are holdovers that could perform well under better coaching and a scheme that may fit their skill sets a little bit better. But this position in particular, cornerback, needs an overhaul. Right? We got one guy in Emmanuel Forbes Jr. that we still don't know what he's going to be in this league, but he's super talented and they're interested in working with him. And so that's a good thing. But after that, you got nothing at the cornerback position. With Kendall Fuller being a free agent, with Benjamin St-Juste being Benjamin St-Juste, this cornerback position needs some work desperately. And I think you have to at least get yourself a boundary corner in free agency, and that will free you up to go in a very deep pool of nickels in the draft to find yourself a nickel corner that could come in and help transform this defense in the secondary. I think there are a number of options that you'll be very satisfied with, I think, in free agency as boundary corners. Remember, cornerback is a premium position. You do have to pay to play at this position. So it makes it interesting as to what you decide to do. I think we've got some guys that aren't going to cost you a ton, but could provide massive dividends in terms of a risk-reward proposition. So let's take a look at the guys that I'm interested in free agency for the Washington Commanders at the cornerback position. So we start with, and remember, all the guys that I am all in on, the ones I want the most are in black. All other options are in burgundy. So you start with my first option, Alo Witherspoon. This is a guy that had a career year last year with the Rams. The part of the reason he's on this list is because he's got speed, he's got size and length, so he can come up, press, be physical at the line of scrimmage, which is what Dan Quinn liked to do in his last iteration as defensive coordinator with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, again, he said it's going to be different. It's not going to be the cover three that he ran with the Falcons and Seahawks. It's not going to be the mainly man-to-man press, coverage that he ran with the Dallas Cowboys. It's going to be some of everything, right? Cool. Whatever the case may be, Alo Witherspoon can play man-to-man, which is what we've struggled with most here in Washington over the last 5 to 7 years. That said, Alo Witherspoon also has ties back to our general manager, Adam Peters. Now, again, I don't know if that ended well for Alo Witherspoon in San Francisco with Adam Peters, but maybe Peters has seen the growth, and now he's seeing the things that led him to want to spend, I think it was a third-round pick on Alo Witherspoon once upon a time, or be a part of the brain trust that spent a third-round pick on him out of Colorado. And so maybe Alo Witherspoon, coming off of his best season, I think he had 4 interceptions for the Rams last year, was outstanding. He might have finally figured it out. And I wouldn't mind, tossing out a flyer on Alo Witherspoon here. He'll be 29 in March. So he's no spring chicken. He's been around the block, but he can still run. He can still play. And I think he might be getting into his bag now. He might be figuring out what it means to be a pro in this league. And it's not too late. It's not too late. Maybe you can get him on a 1-year deal. Maybe this is his final opportunity to really cash in. Maybe he's looking for a multi-year contract from someone. Even if that's the case, I don't think you're going to have to break the bank for Alo Witherspoon. So he is an option to consider. Kendall Fuller, okay, full. I remember having to beat off a lot of the fan base with a stick. They had torches and pitchforks, and they wanted Kendall Fuller's head on a stick, and I had to beat people off. They would call him, all kinds of names. What was the one that they would call him all the time? I forget, man. And so I used to have to deal with all of that, all of the fan base trying to come after my guy K4, and I would defend him tooth and nail, like, no, this is my guy. He can play ball. And I think now there's an appreciation for Kendall Fuller. Took a while, but I think there's a real appreciation for Kendall Fuller. So he's 29, or he'll be 29 in February, or he just turned 29. So I was right. He's 29. He turned 29 in February. And so I think he's one of the most heady, smart football players I've ever seen in the secondary that to play for this team. You got to probably go all the way back to Darrell Green or Champ Bailey if you're looking for a guy like of that caliber. I'm not saying he's in that breath. Those are 2 Hall of Fame players. Kendall Fuller is not a Hall of Fame player, but those guys were extremely smart at the cornerback position, and Kendall Fuller is just as smart as those guys. Probably don't have the same athletic profile as those players did, but he's just as smart. You can't throw screens his way. He knows coverages. He studies players and their tendencies so he can break on things. I think he'd be a great fit for this defense, but they may decide to go in a different direction, but I'm not closing the door on Kendall Fuller returning here to Washington. And if he were to come back, I would have my arms wide open welcoming back K. Full as one of the guys that I think can help turn this thing around here in Washington. Even if it's not at the cornerback position, I think he's smart enough to transition to safety and still give you quality snaps. But we'll see what happens with Kendall Fuller. I think there's a market for him, though. And if he doesn't end up back here, he will end up on another team fairly quickly in free agency, I may add. Michael Davis is a name that really intrigues me. The more that I sit down and think about what he was in L.A. for the Chargers, Michael Davis has turned 29. He did so in January. So another guy like Kendall Fuller and similar to Alo Witherspoon, not the youngest guy in the world. I'm not worried about that. These guys can all still play at a fairly high level. Michael Davis is a track star. When he was in high school, this guy can flat out fly. He ran a 4.3, 4.40 at the combine once upon a time. So this is a guy that can absolutely pick him up, put him down. You don't lose that, right? When you're a speed guy, your speed is the last thing to go. Ask Darrell Green. He was still running a 4.2 or 4.3 40 at 40 years old. That's the last thing that goes, is your speed. So he can still run. And at 6'2" and some change, with that length, Michael Davis is the ideal type of corner for the defense that Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn have been implementing in Dallas, with some bigger corners out there, Stephon Gilmore and Trayvon Diggs, et cetera, et cetera. So Michael Davis can play that press man-to-man that we haven't been able to play here in Washington. And I just think about another reason why he makes a ton of sense here. Our new secondary coach, Tommy Donatel, was with Michael Davis in L.A. with the Chargers, right? So there's a working history, a knowledge of what Michael Davis can provide this football team. I think he'll have some input like, hey, this Michael Davis guy can flat out play. We should give him a look-see. So I think Michael Davis would be a welcomed addition here. I'm actually hoping that they find a way to bring him into the fold. And I don't think you're going to have to pay a whole hell of a lot for Michael Davis. You're going to have to pay him, just like any corner in this market. But I don't think you're going to have to break the bank. I'll say this. I think a Kendall Fuller deal is more expensive than a Michael Davis deal. And I'll leave it at that. So, lastly, Jeff Okudah is a guy that I am extremely intrigued by. And I put him in the same boat with Devin White at the linebacker position. I put him in the same boat with Mekhi Becton at the tackle position. Former first-round picks who have failed in their first stops. In the case of Okudah, he had mixed results in Atlanta this past year. The Falcons traded for him this past offseason. It did not work. He's going to be a free agent. This guy can still play. He's still talented. I'm not giving up on him yet. This is a former top 5 pick in the NFL draft. And I don't see why this guy can't be a welcome addition to a team in a secondary that they're looking to grow with. They want turnovers. They want guys that have the ability. Jeff Okudah has all of that. He's got to stay healthy, and that's been one of his bugaboos in his career is health. But the talent is undeniable. And if you believe in the coaching staff, then a guy like Jeff Okudah should probably be someone that you should be intrigued by, frankly. And I am. And I don't know. Jeff Okudah will be 20, or he is 25. He turned 25 in February. So unlike the rest of the guys on the list, he is a puppy. And in saying that, he's intriguing because he could literally be looking for a 1-year prove-it deal, which is in line with what we're looking for. He might be like, nah, I'm not trying to sign on long-term because I'm not going to get the kind of money that I think I can get. Let me go out here, ball for a year, and then I hit the market again next year and look to get paid. That's right up our alley. 1-year flyer on a guy that has tremendous upside, low risk, high reward type of proposition. Sign me up. Sign me up. So those are the guys that I would target in free agency as boundary corners. All of those guys are boundary corners. Kenny Moore II in Indianapolis is a name that I would be interested in as a nickel if they were, looking to go that route. But I don't want to go nickel when there are so many of them in the draft. Now, I will say this. Nickels are pretty cheap. You don't pay a premium for nickels. But I would just go in the draft. There's so many nickels in the draft. I don't think you need to spend money on one in free agency. If I had my option to do that, I'd just go in the draft. So other players to consider that I think the team in particular that I don't necessarily love, but the team I think will consider. First guy is Jordan Lewis. Former Michigan Wolverine that was selected in the second round by the Dallas Cowboys, played his entire career thus far with the Cowboys, which means he has been under Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn for the last 3 years, so they know what Jordan Lewis is all about. Now, he did have a major injury a couple years ago, but he's a guy that they probably know his skill set. They probably trust him, so I wouldn't rule him out as a guy that they may potentially want to bring along to Washington as they continue to try to, or as they look to implement their defensive scheme. I'm not interested in Jordan Lewis. I think you can do better than Jordan Lewis, but again, they know him well, and if they feel like he's the guy that they want to bring in, so be it, right? And then another former Dallas Cowboy, Stephon Gilmore, is a guy to consider. I myself am okay. On Jordan Lewis, he will be 29 in August. And as far as Stephon Gilmore is concerned, Father Time is probably tapping him on the shoulder as we speak. He'll be 34 in September. I've always said the cornerback position is no country for old men. He's getting up there. We saw him exposed in the playoff game against the Green Bay Packers, but I know that the last image that you see can be an indelible one, but Stephon Gilmore actually played really well for the Cowboys this past season. So you hate the fact that last image. I don't hate it because he played for the Cowboys. I loved it actually, but he can still play is what I'm trying to insinuate. I don't want him. I'm good. I'll pass. But he may be a guy that they still think has some mileage left, and they don't mind trying to get it out of him, and they know what they're getting with Stephon Gilmore. So these are the names to consider. I'm going to stick with the guys that I like, and hopefully they stay away from the former Cowboys at this particular position. I'd appreciate that greatly, but we'll see what happens. I really would prefer them to stay away from former Cowboys in the secondary. That includes Jaron Kearse, in addition to the two guys I just talked about, altogether. Right? I don't mind bringing Dorrance Armstrong as edge rusher on board. I don't mind them looking at other positions and poaching former Cowboys and bringing them along. Stay away from the secondary. I'm good on all of those guys, but we'll see what they decide to do. Speaking of which, what says you? What do you think Washington should do at the cornerback position? Is there a name that I didn't reference that you would like to see them go after in free agency? Leave it down in the comment section. Can't wait to read your responses. Or should they forget about free agency and attack corner in the draft? Love to hear your responses. But that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I look forward to hearing from you guys as to what you think Washington will do at the cornerback position. And overall, can't wait to see what Washington does. We're inching ever so close to the start of free agency and the tampering period. So we'll be hearing some things here shortly, right? Probably in the next 12 to 24 hours, we'll start to hear news trickling in as to guys agreeing to terms. Remember, nothing is official until the start of the new league year and guys actually put ink to paper. But you'll hear a lot of guys agreeing to terms with teams. Hopefully the Commanders jump into the fray early and often. They need to. We need a lot of stuff. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care. Louie T.